If you have the courage to hear the full nightmare, stay till the end. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to uncover more terrifying stories like this. I never believed mirrors could lie. That night, staring at my reflection, I realized they could do far worse. They could show you the future. It started with a flicker, a shadow stretching across my room as I prepared for bed. My reflection in the cracked mirror didn't mimic me. It lingered, too still, too deliberate. My heart thumped, each beat loud against the silence. I leaned closer, thinking it was a trick of the dim light, but then I saw it. My reflection grinning while I wore a terrified expression I hadn't yet felt. Panic clawed at my chest. I stepped back. Nothing changed. Or rather, the mirror didn't change, I did. My reflection tilted its head slowly, as if studying me, predicting my fear. The air grew colder, heavier. Every instinct screamed to look away, but my eyes were glued to the impossible. Then, the reflection moved on its own. It raised a finger, pointing toward the corner of my room. My gaze followed. Nothing. The darkness held only shadows, but the unease whispered that something was there, waiting. My reflection's grin widened. I stumbled backward, tripping over the edge of the carpet. "Is this real?" I whispered, voice trembling. The reflection tilted, shaking its head slowly, mocking me. Then, it spoke, or rather, the silence screamed a warning, a premonition. Flashes of images appeared behind the reflection, hazy but vivid. Me, alone, desperate, running through a corridor lined with mirrors, faces of strangers twisted in fear, shadows stretching like tendrils. A future I hadn't lived yet, but was already written. I backed away, fumbling for the light. My hand shook as the switch clicked. Nothing. The room was as it had been. My reflection smiled normally now, mimicking me perfectly. Yet, I couldn't shake the memory of what I had seen. As I lay in bed, the shadows in my room seemed to twitch in ways that mirrored the reflections in my mind. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again, my own terrified face, my reflection grinning at what was to come. I realized, with a chill that sank into my bones, that I wasn't alone in my room. Something had already arrived. Something that knew me better than I knew myself. And it was waiting. Morning never came easy that day. Every light in my apartment felt dim, as if shadows clung stubbornly to the corners. I tried to convince myself it was a nightmare, a trick of the tired mind, but mirrors don't lie, do they? I avoided every reflective surface as I moved through my small apartment, coffee untouched in my hand. My reflection didn't appear in any glass or window. At first, relief. Then, the unmistakable feeling that I was being watched. It started subtle, a movement in the corner of my eye. Something small, fleeting. I spun around. Nothing. But the unease lingered, crawling over my skin like cold fingers. That night, I returned to the bathroom, drawn inexplicably to the mirror. It wasn't my reflection waiting this time. It was something like me, yes, but wrong. Slightly taller, its features sharper, its grin more cruel. It didn't mirror my movements. It anticipated them. Every blink I took, it had already shifted, tilting its head, watching, waiting. "You shouldn't be here," it said. My blood ran cold. My voice failed me. I wanted to smash the mirror, but a voice inside my head whispered, "If you do, it will step out." I froze. My own instincts had become unreliable. The reflection, or whatever it was, leaned closer, tapping its finger against the glass like it was tracing a line I couldn't see. I realized then that this presence had been studying me long before the first flicker in the night. It knew my fears, my habits, the exact moment my gaze would falter. Each detail of my life, cataloged. And now, it was preparing something. Suddenly, I noticed something horrifying. The doppelganger didn't just exist in the mirror. It had started moving independently. Shadows around the apartment shifted unnaturally. Shapes in the darkness seemed to stretch toward me. One by one, items on the counter rattled, then slid toward the edges as if pushed by invisible hands. I fled to the bedroom, slamming the door behind me. Heart hammering, I pressed my back against it. A soft, deliberate knock came, not from outside, but from inside, the mirror on my dresser. My reflection's hand tapped in perfect rhythm with the knocking. Panic overtook reason. I didn't care about safety. I didn't care about explanations. I knew that thing, that reflection, had a plan, and I was its first move. Then, I noticed something even worse. my phone was recording. Video app open, timer running, though I hadn't touched it. And on the screen, my doppelganger sat calmly in the reflection, grinning, waiting for me to act. Every instinct screamed to destroy it, but I knew instinct alone wouldn't save me. As the knocking grew louder, my reflection raised a finger and pointed behind me. Slowly, I turned. Nothing. I turned. Nothing. Yet the hair on my neck stood on end. I could feel it. Whatever was coming, it had already begun. Sleep was impossible. Every corner of my apartment felt alive, as if the shadows themselves were breathing, waiting. I couldn't bring myself to look at the mirrors again, yet I was drawn to them, compelled by a force I couldn't name. That night, unable to resist, I approached the bathroom mirror. My reflection was different. It no longer mimicked me. Instead, it showed me something I had never seen before, an image of myself standing in a long, dimly lit hallway. My own eyes were wide with terror, hands trembling, as if fleeing from someone or something. I staggered back, heart pounding. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was a window into the future. My doppelganger leaned forward, pressing its face against the glass, grinning with perfect knowledge of what I had just seen. Then, the reflection whispered, no, not audibly, but in my mind. You can't run from what you will become. The words etched themselves into my skull. I realized it wasn't merely showing me a possible outcome. It was taunting me, teaching me, shaping my fear. I tried to leave the apartment, but the doors resisted. Keys wouldn't turn. The lock clicked, but didn't open. Windows refused to budge. Panic set in. I was trapped. And worse, the reflection's grin widened with every failed attempt. Suddenly, the hallway in the mirror began to shift. The future was alive. Shadows stretched and writhed along the walls, darker than any darkness I had known. Figures emerged, blurred, indistinct, but human enough to make my stomach churn. They pointed at me, and a single thought burned through my mind. They weren't strangers. They were versions of myself, twisted, broken, waiting. I fell to my knees. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and my reflection's hand emerged halfway through the glass. It beckoned, a slow, deliberate motion. My pulse raced. Every instinct screamed to flee, but escape was impossible. The strangest part? I felt curious. A sick curiosity I couldn't resist. I reached toward the glass. The moment my fingers brushed it, the hallway pulled me in, not physically, but mentally. I saw everything. Myself running endlessly, faces of fear mirrored back at me, shadows whispering secrets I didn't understand. Then the image shifted suddenly. My reflection leaned close, closer than ever, and smiled. This is only the beginning. I stumbled back, gasping for air. The hallway faded, but the sense of inevitability lingered. Every shadow in my room seemed heavier now, thicker, watching, waiting. I realized with a growing dread that the future wasn't just in the mirror, it was creeping into my reality. And every choice I made from that moment forward would bring me closer to that hallway. The following day felt wrong. The sunlight seemed dim, filtered through an invisible haze. Every reflective surface in the apartment, windows, polished countertops, even my phone screen, felt like a trap. I couldn't shake the feeling that my reflection was watching me even when I wasn't looking directly at a mirror. I tried to leave for the first time since the hallway vision, desperate for any sense of normalcy. But every door, every lock, even the elevator seemed to resist me. The apartment wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to the reflection. When I returned to the living room, my coffee table had shifted. I hadn't moved it. And there, on the polished surface, a perfect handprint appeared. Large, dark, impossibly human, yet it hadn't existed a moment before. My pulse raced. The reflection had learned how to interact with my world. I backed away toward the hallway. That's when I noticed the subtle movement behind me in the mirror. The reflection didn't just mimic my movements anymore. It acted independently. It raised a hand and tapped the glass 3 times. A signal, a warning. Every instinct screamed to destroy the mirror. But I remembered the voice inside my head. If you destroy it, it steps out. The thought was unbearable. So I froze, heart hammering, staring into the darkness of my own eyes. Then came the whispering, not audible, but threaded through my mind. You cannot escape. You will follow the path you saw. The words crawled into my consciousness like icy fingers. The shadows in the corners of the room stretched toward me, elongating unnaturally, moving as if alive. I tried to convince myself it was hallucination, a trick of exhaustion, fear, or paranoia. But the subtle ticking began, the faintest sound, like clockwork. It wasn't coming from the apartment. It was coming from inside my chest. My heartbeat echoed unnaturally, matching the taps of the reflection. Then, the mirror changed. The reflection smiled wider, leaning forward until its face nearly pressed against the glass. Its eyes glimmered with something I hadn't seen before, malice, but also knowledge. It knew me better than I knew myself. The room's shadows swirled around me, and I realized the terrifying truth. My reflection wasn't just a warning anymore. It was an active force, reshaping my reality to mirror the future it had shown me. And I was powerless to stop it. As I sank to the floor, trembling, I noticed the final detail, a second reflection in the corner of the mirror. Not me. Something smaller, darker, watching, waiting. Its grin mirrored the first, but sharper, crueler. A prelude of what was coming next that I couldn't sleep. Every shadow in my apartment seemed to shift when I blinked, as if alive, testing me, watching me. The reflection no longer stayed confined to mirrors. It whispered in the silence, hinting at things only I could hear, speaking truths I didn't want to know. I tried to leave the living room, but my apartment had transformed into a labyrinth. Hallways stretched impossibly long. Doors appeared where none existed before, and my reflection always appeared at the end, smiling knowingly. Each step I took was mirrored, not just by my image, but by the shadows around me, twisting like dark, living silhouettes. Then I saw it. A single message written across the mirror in condensation, though I hadn't breathed near it. You are the key. My blood ran cold. The reflection had a purpose. It wasn't just haunting me, it wanted something from me. Something I couldn't yet understand. The whispers grew louder, yet still silent, threading into my thoughts. Follow the path, or lose yourself forever. Images flashed across the glass. A vision of myself standing in a dark room, my reflection on the wall behind me, grinning as I screamed silently. And then, a door opening, leading to a place I didn't know existed. Every instinct screamed to resist, but my legs moved toward the bathroom mirror, where everything had begun. My reflection awaited me, calm now, almost patient. I realized it had orchestrated this, every flicker, every shadow, every impossible door. It was guiding me towards something, a fate it had chosen. I touched the glass again. The hallway from before appeared once more, this time longer, darker, filled with twisting shapes. My own future unrolled before my eyes like a film, horrifying, inevitable. I could see myself trapped, running endlessly, hunted by versions of myself that were broken, twisted. My reflection's grin widened with satisfaction, as if savoring every detail. And then came the sudden shift. A hand, dark and semi-transparent, reached out from the mirror, not my reflections, but something else, older, crueler. The air grew thick, and the temperature dropped. I could feel the shadows pressing against me, nudging, pushing, testing my resolve. I fell back, staring into the mirror. The reflection spoke this time, voice clear inside my mind. You can see it. You can feel it. But the question is, can you survive it? Every muscle in my body froze. The future wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a trap, and I was already inside. I teed up why now. Exhaustion had hollowed me out. Every attempt to ignore the mirrors, to escape the apartment, failed. The shadows had grown bolder, moving without hesitation, following me like dark smoke clinging to my skin. Every reflective surface seemed to pulse with life, each one a window to the twisted future I had already glimpsed. I finally stopped running. Standing in front of the largest mirror in the living room, I forced myself to look. My reflection stared back, but it wasn't just me. Its grin was wider, sharper, its eyes glinting with cruelty and intelligence. And behind it, the second shadow, the darker one, emerged fully. It moved independently, crouched, waiting, as if assessing my fear. You've seen too much, my reflection whispered in my mind, and yet you know nothing. I swallowed hard, every instinct screaming to flee, but something inside me snapped. I had to act. I raised a hand and mirrored its movements. The reflection mimicked me perfectly, smirking with anticipation. But I remembered something subtle I had noticed before. When I made the smallest hesitation, the shadows faltered. A plan formed in my mind. I took a deep breath and focused. Slowly, deliberately, I stepped closer. The shadows recoiled slightly, the second reflection's grin twitching as if startled. My reflection's calm demeanor cracked for the first time. It hissed, not a sound in the room, but a vibration in my chest. Then came the first true assault. The room's lights flickered violently, shadows twisting into humanoid forms, reaching for me. My heart raced. I couldn't fight them physically. I had to outsmart them. I moved my gaze rapidly between all mirrors, confusing them, predicting their movements. Every glance, every shift in attention made the shadows hesitate, stumble. The reflection's whisper grew louder in my mind. You cannot control what you do not understand. But I had begun to understand. The shadows weren't independent. They relied on my fear to guide them. The more I panicked, the stronger they became. Calm, I realized, was my only weapon. I focused on my own breathing, slowed my pulse, and met the reflection's gaze directly. No flinching, no hesitation. For a heartbeat, the room froze. Shadows trembled. The second reflection hissed, lunging toward the glass, but the surface held. I raised my hand again, this time deliberately mirroring the reflection's gesture, but with intent. Slowly, I traced a circle on the mirror, eyes locked on the shadow. It recoiled. A shiver ran through the room. My reflection faltered, the grin flickering like a broken projection. And then, in one sudden motion, the second shadow disappeared into the glass, leaving only a cold emptiness behind. I gasped, chest heaving. I had survived for now, but I knew the reflection wasn't gone. It was patient, calculating, waiting. And tomorrow, it would try again. The morning light offered no comfort. Even daylight seemed gray, muted, as though the shadows had seeped into reality itself. I tried to convince myself I had won, that my careful focus had held the reflection at bay. But small details kept reminding me otherwise. The clock ticked off time in uneven pulses, objects subtly shifting overnight, shadows lingering longer than they should. I realized, with growing dread, that surviving the reflection once had come at a cost. Every glance at a reflective surface now carried a price. My thoughts, my actions, even my memories, began to feel less mine. Flickers of images, half-remembered events, glances of myself doing things I hadn't yet done, invaded my mind. The reflection was rewriting reality in subtle ways. I noticed it first in the apartment's hallway. Doors I remembered placing now seemed crooked, walls slightly askew, as if my environment was bending to match the twisted future in the mirror. I touched a photo frame. It tilted back on its own, a shadowed handprint lingering where my fingers had brushed. Then came the visions, brief, impossible, but undeniable. A glimpse of myself, trapped in an endless corridor, screaming silently as multiple shadows mirrored my terror. I blinked, and the vision vanished, leaving only the room around me. But I knew it was real. It had already begun to happen. Panic surged, but I forced myself to breathe. I couldn't run, couldn't hide. My reflection's whispers filled my mind, softer now, more deliberate. You see what must come. You will do nothing. You are already mine. I tried to resist, to push back, but the shadows responded instantly. Every hesitation, every falter strengthened them. I staggered to the largest mirror, raising my hand to it. The reflection mimicked me again, perfectly, but this time, its smile was slow, predatory. Behind it, the darker second shadow returned, its grin wider than ever, eyes glinting with knowledge of my every weakness. I realized then what it had been waiting for. I had survived confrontation, but the reflection's plan was inevitable. Every fear I had fed it, every misstep, every skipped heartbeat had prepared the stage. The future it had shown me, the hallway, the endless running, the twisted versions of myself, wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a promise. I could feel the pull again. Shadows creeping across the floor, winding around my legs, tugging me forward. The reflection raised its hand slowly, beckoning me toward the glass. I wanted to scream, to resist, but the pressure was suffocating, irresistible. And then, the final cruel whisper. Tomorrow, you will begin the path you saw. And there is no turning back. I sank to the floor, trembling. My apartment, my life, even my own mind. Everything was now a stage for the reflection's design. I had survived the first battle, but the war was already underway. The shadows were patient. The reflection was patient. And I was running out of time. Night had fallen, heavier than ever. The apartment felt alien. Every shadow stretched unnaturally, and every reflective surface glimmered with a cold, watching intelligence. I knew what was coming. I had glimpsed it in the mirror too many times, but knowing didn't make it any less terrifying. I stood before the largest mirror, my hands shaking, my pulse deafening. My reflection stared back with a grin that had grown impossibly wide, eyes glinting with malicious triumph. Behind it, the second shadow loomed, coiled like a predator, waiting for me to falter. "You cannot escape," the reflection whispered, a voice threading directly into my mind. "You are already the path." I realized the truth in a crushing instant. The visions, the shadows, the twisted future, it was never about survival. It was about transformation. Every fear, every hesitation, every glance at the mirrors had built the bridge from my present self to the reflection's world. And now, the bridge was complete. The shadows surged, thickening around me, twisting my limbs, pulling me closer to the glass. I resisted, fought with every ounce of will I had. But the reflection moved faster, predicting each attempt, countering every escape. My heartbeat synced with the eerie rhythm of the shadows, each beat pushing me closer to inevitability. Then the mirror rippled. My reflection reached forward, fully materializing, not as an image, but as something almost alive. Its hand brushed mine through the glass, and for a moment, I felt a cold, impossible pull, a tether to the other side. I struggled, screamed, but the shadows tightened. And then, in a heartbeat that stretched for an eternity, I understood. I didn't just see the terrifying future. I was becoming it. My own reflection, twisted and patient, had drawn me into a path I could not escape. A final whisper echoed in my mind, softer this time, almost tender in its cruelty. "Tomorrow, you will rise as I have shown, and everything will follow." The glass pulsed, the shadows reached their full form, and the room seemed to stretch endlessly. I felt myself pulled forward, part of the reflection, part of the hallway I had glimpsed so many nights ago. A scream rose in my throat, but it was swallowed by the darkness, leaving only silence. And then, suddenly, I was back. Or was I? My apartment seemed the same, yet something was wrong. A faint, predatory grin flashed in every reflective surface I passed. My own eyes stared back at me, but something inside them was not mine. I froze. My reflection winked, and the shadows in the corners of the room twitched in anticipation. The path had begun, and there was no turning back. If you enjoyed this horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell icon for more terrifying stories.